Hey adventurers, so today is going to be another book review. This is going to be for Pawn of Prophecy by David Eddings. This is the first book in the Belgariad series. This is a high fantasy, epic fantasy, classic fantasy, whatever that means. At some point I'm going to do a video on classic fantasy, kind of piggybacking off of Liam's recent video. Well, at the time you're seeing this review, it won't be a recent video anymore, but Liam made a video about classic fantasy that will probably come out, and I want to do a video kind of piggybacking off that video. And that video, because it's going to be a Thursday video, will probably end up coming out before this review. Anyways, that's rambling. I don't need to do that. This is coming of age, hero's journey, just kind of like the very generic tropes that we associate often with fantasy. Pawn of Prophecy by David Eddings is the first book in the Belgariad, a classic epic fantasy series full of the beloved tropes and character archetypes that you can think of, just completely full of them. And I feel like it's actually done rather beautifully and in an immersive way. But even with all the familiarity, it maintains its unique feel and is something special in and of itself, and I really appreciate that as well. This is a series that I've known about for many, many years, and I've wanted to read it for a very long time, but for some reason I had never actually written it down on my TBR as something that I need to pick up at some point. I have a list of books or series in my notes app that's just books that I want to read, and that's what I call my TBR. I've also got the generic TBR on Goodreads that I just, anytime I see a book, I hit add to TBR or whatever, and so there's that one as well. But the one that I actually use for all my stuff is this notes app on my phone, and for some reason I've never added Belgariad or Pawn of Prophecy or anything like that to that list, and so I had never thought to go searching for these books when I wanted to read them. So it was kind of just like a little bit of a fluke that I actually came across this book and decided to pick it up. I was, as often happens, I was scrolling through my library to see what audiobooks they had available, and I came across the Pawn of Prophecy, and I was like, oh yeah, I want to read that book, and so I picked it up and I read it and I really enjoyed it. Before I get into the rest of this review though, I just quickly like to say welcome to An Erudite Adventurer. I'm T. If you're liking what you're seeing from us, please like, comment, and subscribe. As I mentioned, I was not really expecting to read this book when I did, and as is often the case, I needed an audiobook, so this is kind of me. I guess I don't need to rehash all of this, and it was because I just told you all that. I'm super glad that it was available when I wanted it, and it was exactly what I was hoping for in that moment that I needed it, and it was just an extremely enjoyable read for me. I did not really know what to expect going into it, and I was hoping for something that at the very least would be fairly clean. I didn't know, but that's what I was hoping for, and I was actually very impressed with it. Around the same time as I read this, I had also read The Crystal Cave by Mary Stewart, and tonally this felt very similar. The two series felt very similar. That was a very pleasant surprise for me, and something that was definitely beneficial for me as a reader. I was also excited to start a new epic fantasy series since I had also just recently finished The Wheel of Time, and so I was thinking, okay, I've finished Wheel of Time. That's a massive series that I can set aside and move on to this book, to this new epic fantasy series, and so it was really good to actually get to that as well. Part of what I loved about this is how much mythology is an important piece of this world. There's ancient myths and godlike beings and powerful sorcerers, and so much that just feels familiar to us as humans, where we have these stories for ourselves that we look back to the myths and the legends of Earth. And so it was really nice to see that sort of thing in a fictional world. But here it's not really treated as some novelty, but as an actual piece of the world, and in a lot of ways very similar to how it is on Earth, but kind of even more real in this world. People understand that it's not just a myth, this is actually real. But it's also not in the weird free-for-all sandbox style that David Gemmell used with the Stones of Power duology, but it's something that is real and serious and important, and there's gravitas, there's depth to these beings, to these stories. There's a reason why they happened the way that they did, and it's not just, oh, let's connect all these things because we're playing with them, which is fun to do, and it worked really well when Gemmell did it, but I wouldn't want it in every series, and I especially wouldn't want it in another epic fantasy series the likes of the Belgariad. It's clear that behind the scenes, there is so much more going on in this world. The politics, the characters, the reveals, and just everything that is just very intentional in what Eddings was doing. There are things that you know will be important later on, but you don't necessarily know how. And that can be from the early parts of the book to later parts of the book or from book 1 to through the rest of the series. And there are pieces that you don't expect to be something super important that once the truth of them is revealed, it kind of changes the shape and trajectory of the story and everything that you thought you understood. And so there's reveals, there's twists. It's, even though it is very familiar in a lot of ways, it's something that most fantasy fans would recognize and understand what's going on. There's still some twists and some things that are interesting and unique to this series, and I appreciate seeing that. I can't really say that the twists are usually super surprising. They do often follow well-known tropes, but that does not mean that it is bad or poorly done. In actuality, it utilizes those tropes in a wonderful way, and in a way that I feel is very strong, is very well done. It's not worried about trying to subvert them, but rather just focuses on telling a good story. I think that is ultimately why this book worked as well as it did for me. It wasn't trying to do anything or be anything other than just a good fantasy story, and that makes me love it all the more because well, for one, I love fantasy stories, but also I just love stories, and when a book is trying to be a story and nothing else, when it's just trying to tell the story that the author wants to tell, those are the books that I enjoy the most. Overall, this is a series that I'm stoked to continue, and I definitely need time to do so. But the goal is to get to the next book relatively quickly, which this hasn't happened because when did I read Pawn of Prophecy? I read Pawn of Prophecy in July, and I'm currently filming this in December. And I do plan to read book 2 in December, but that's still, July to December is 6 months, and that's far longer than I was hoping. I was hoping for like 2 months, and because of how far behind I am on writing and filming reviews, that hasn't happened. I'm trying to write and film my review before I get to the next book in the series so that I don't have my thoughts being mixed up with books in the series. This series has been a major influence on many other writers, and after reading the first book, I can definitely understand why and see the influences of it on even some of the other series that I've read. I don't claim to be the most well-read or widely read fantasy reader. There's a ton of stuff that I just haven't ever read, but I can see how something like the Belgariad has been as influential as it is because I've read series that I can recognize its influence on. It's definitely one of my favorite books that I've read this year, of which there have been quite a few, and so to have another book that falls into that favorite books list, that's something that I'm rather impressed with and rather I enjoy quite a bit. I'm glad to see that that's the case. So anyways, that is my review of Pawn of Prophecy by David Eddings, book 1 of the Belgariad. Thank you guys for watching an Erudite adventure. We post videos every Monday and Thursday, and our social media is linked in the description down below. We'll see you guys again soon. Stay warm.